and welcome back to Megan Mondays. Today is episode 12, and at this point, we might just change it to Megan Mondays and Tuesdays because this is week 3 that we've posted on Tuesday. So if you're new here, hello. If you've been rocking with me since the very beginning, you already know what we get into on Mondays and Tuesdays. We get into it. No fluff, no pretending, just real conversation about real things. Last week, we talked a little bit about saying no, knowing when to say it, and why it's so hard, and why an honest no is always better than a yes that you can't back up. So if you haven't watched that one yet, go back and watch that one first because today is essentially a part 2. We are making a part 2 because this is what I realized after putting that episode out. Saying no is actually the easy part, or at least it's the first part. And I truly believe what comes after saying no is where it sometimes can get complicated. Because a lot of us will work up the courage to say no and then spend the next 3 days making ourselves feel guilty for saying no. We second guess ourselves and we wonder if we made the right call by saying no. That tells me that the real issue isn't saying no. The real issue is whether we believe we're actually worth saying no for. And that is what we're getting into today. Okay, so you say no. Maybe it's a work project, social obligation, or maybe it was just a role that somebody wanted you to take on. Whatever it was, you paused, you thought it through, and you said, I can't do that right now. For like 5 minutes, you felt good about it, grounded and clear, and then the spiral started. What if they're upset with me? What if they think I'm lazy? What if they ask somebody else and that person does better? Now I've been replaced. What if I should have just said yes and figured it out? Maybe I could have made it work. Maybe I'm being dramatic. Maybe I'm just scared. Am I a bad friend? A bad person? Sound familiar? The spiral is so common and it's very exhausting. But what I want you to notice is none of those thoughts are actually about the decision that you made. They're all about what other people think of you. And they're all rooted in one core fear. If you're not constantly available, constantly giving, or constantly saying yes, somehow you are less valuable. And that right there is the one thing that I wanted to talk about. Because that fear doesn't come from nowhere, it's rooted. It was taught slowly over time through 100 small messages that add up to be one big belief. The belief that your value is tied to what you do for other people. Okay, think about it. From the time that we're kids, the people who get praised are the helpers, the ones who volunteer, the ones who go above and beyond. They always show up and they never complain. And look, those are great qualities to have. I'm not knocking that at all. But somewhere along the way, a lot of us took that message and internalized it as if I stop doing, I stop mattering. And so we fill our calendars. We say yes before we even think about it. We take on other people's problems and we stretch ourselves past our limits because what's the alternative? Being seen as someone who couldn't or wouldn't. And to a lot of us, that feeling is unbearable. And when we finally do say no, we feel like we have violated some unspoken rule. Like we've broken a contract that we didn't know that we signed. But here's the truth. The contract was never yours to begin with. You didn't sign up to earn your worth through constant availability. That was a story that you were handed, but you get to put it down. Okay, so let's talk about self-worth for a second because I think it gets thrown around without people actually unpacking what it means. Self-worth is not self-confidence. Confidence is about what you think you can do. Self-worth is about what you think you deserve just by existing. Very different. Not because of your productivity and not because of how helpful you are, not because of your job title or your relationship status or how many people need you. And I feel like when your self-worth is solid, like genuinely solid, not just something you say, the guilt after saying no is completely different. And it's almost like instead of what will they think of me, it becomes I made the right call for where I am right now. Instead of maybe I should have pushed through. It becomes I knew my limits and I respected them. Let me be honest, that shift doesn't happen overnight. I definitely want to be real about that. It takes consistency and repetitive action. Building genuine self-worth after years of tying it to your outcome is work. It takes practice and it takes honesty. And sometimes it takes sitting in some really uncomfortable feelings. But I'll be real, it starts with one decision, and you have to stop treating yourself like you are only as valuable as your last yes. I do want to spend a minute on people pleasing because I think that that is deeply connected to this, and I don't think that we call it out enough. Sometimes people pleasing gets a bad rep. Like it's just this annoying personality trait. But here's the truth. I think the reality is that chronic people pleasing is usually a coping mechanism. It's something that a lot of us have developed over time because at some point, keeping people happy felt like the safest option and the safest way to keep ourselves safe. Maybe you grew up in an environment where conflict was dangerous. Maybe you grew up learning that being agreeable kept the peace. Maybe you had people in your life whose moods were unpredictable and you got really good at managing everyone around you so that things didn't blow up. Whatever the origin, I think it's different for everybody. The result is the same. You become an expert at reading what people need and shrinking yourself to provide it. And I feel like sometimes we get so good at it that you eventually stop knowing what you really need because you've spent so long focused outward. And that's exhausting. It's a genuinely exhausting way to live. And I definitely believe that saying no is the first thing to break that cycle. But it only sticks when you pair that with the belief that your needs are just as legitimate. Not more important, just equal. And that's it. Okay, so practicality. How do you start building real self worth? Because I don't want to just leave you with the concept, okay? First, we are going to start noticing the language that you use about yourself. Not out loud necessarily, but in your head. Are you constantly minimizing? Are you apologizing for taking up space? Are you framing your needs as inconveniences? That internal language right there is shaping how you see yourself, whether you realize it or not. So start catching it, do better, okay? You don't have to fix it overnight, you just have to start noticing. Second, keep the promises that you make to yourself. This is a big one, okay? We talk a lot about showing up for other people, but self-worth is also built by showing up for yourself. When you say you're going to do something for you, rest, boundary, a goal, whatever it is, follow it through. Every time that you honor a commitment to yourself, you send the message to yourself that you matter. And third, let yourself receive. A lot of people who struggle with self-worth are great at giving and terrible with receiving. Compliments, help, kindness, they deflect it or oftentimes minimize it or immediately try and return it. Practice saying just thank you, period. Thank you, period. Practice letting something good land without immediately battling it away. So, okay, so here's where all of this connects. When you know your worth, you really know it. Saying no stops being this terrifying act of courage and it just starts being a normal part of how you move through the world. You stop over explaining because you're not trying to justify your value. You stop spiraling afterwards because you're not waiting for someone else to confirm that you made the right decision. You stop filling the space back up immediately afterwards because you actually believe that you deserve rest. And the people in your life, the ones that are actually there for you, they're not going to leave because you said no. I think a lot of people forget that real relationships do not require you to be endlessly available. They can hold a no, they can respect a boundary. And if somebody in your life genuinely cannot handle you having limits or boundaries, I feel like that tells you something important about the relationship that you probably should have known anyways. Your no should not be a threat to people who truly value you. It is an invitation for the relationship to be real. Okay, so that is episode 12. Say no and mean it. And then do the deeper work of actually believing that you are worth saying it for. Because the goal isn't just to say no more. The goal is to get to a place where protecting yourself does not feel like some radical act, where your needs do not feel like a burden, and where you move through your days where you're clear on what you have to give and at peace with what you don't. And this is the version of you that shows up fully. You are not a machine and you are not defined by your output, okay? You were worth it before you ever did a single thing for anybody else. Okay, so this was episode 12. I will see you guys next Monday.